This is Word for the Week, exploring a balanced view of Scripture for the wholeness of life, for wisdom, understanding, and growth. Welcome to this episode of Word for the Week.
Yep, and before we get into the deep dive on this week's word, how about we do a few other little things?
Sure.
Starting with this question. How did you do on this week in your, we started our little campaign, Month of Gratitude, which is a prayer campaign, really.
Yeah, it was a bit different, just that, just some harder things, dealing with some harder things, so being thankful has taken on kind of a different dimension, thinking of, things kept coming to me, like being thankful for the hard things.
Wow. Yeah, that's...
I
I guess we have our own version of what went on. As for me, it shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. That is, we continued in a campaign of very simple, just first thing in the morning to ask, or not to ask, that was the point. It wasn't asking. It was simply giving thanks for something we were grateful for, with the idea that a spirit of gratitude would build. And what I really found was this week was tougher in that it was like the enemy hitting back. It's that there were days where I found it hard to feel grateful, even though I think the gratitude is finding depth. So, but yeah, it was a challenge I didn't expect.
Yeah.
So
I guess we should.
Yeah, we should. And that's, you're always like, why am I so surprised?
All right.
But anyway, it was a good week. I felt a little more entrenched in the habit of being grateful, which you can't lose with that. So before even we get to a word of the week, we do a song of the week, which is some type of praise or hymn that we've loved enough that we gave our own shot at trying to do it, and then we highlight it here. So what can you tell us about this week's song?
The original title, God Leads Us Along, and we did a version, God Leads His Dear Children Along. We did it totally live this week, and which is always fun to do.
Yeah.
This is a hymn that was written in 1903 by George A. Young, and it's a reminder that God's providence is still with us, even in our difficult moments. I think that's in my...
There's actually quite a story to this song, isn't it?
Yes.
So what do you know, my dear, about George A. Young?
He was a rural preacher and carpenter who humbly served the Lord on a very meager salary. However, instead of complaining about his situation, George and his family served the Lord as a loyal servant. And he actually, through their meager salary and resources, eventually managed to construct a house of their own.
That's where it pays to be a carpenter.
But still, in 1903, very difficult. And they were very happy to have their own house, as we all are when we have our own house. Unfortunately, while he was away holding meetings in another area, some people decided to make life very difficult for this humble servant of God, and they burnt his house down.
Yep, that's kind of playing hardball there.
Yeah. But instead of complaining and blaming God for not preventing this misfortune, George never lost faith in the Lord. And it's out of this tragedy that he wrote this hymn that continues to bless us to this day.
Yeah, 1903. But isn't it something? You never think about some of the stuff that this hymn we're singing. What's the story behind it? Well, somebody burnt his house down, and it resulted in this song. It's
so many of the hymns.
Yeah.
It's through tragedy that they're reaching, calling out to God, and this is what
some deep experience.
Yeah.
So new appreciation for this as we listen to as God leads
His
us
dear children along.
There we go, or leads us along, depending on the time. Here we go.
Shake
children alone. Where the waters who flow pace the weary one's feet, God leads his dear children alone. Some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives the song in the night season and all the day long. Sometimes on the mount where the sun shines so bright, God leads his dear children alone. Sometimes in the valley, in darkest of night, God leads his dear children along. Some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives the song in the night season and all the day long. Though sorrows befall us and Satan oppose, God leads his dear children along. Through grace we can conquer, defeat all our foes. God leads his dear children along. Some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives the song in the night season and all the day long. Some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives the song in the night season and all the day long. In the night season and all the day long.
And now, the moment we've been waiting for, the word of the week is, quote, path.
Path. Well, not to sound disappointed, but that doesn't exactly sound very stimulating.
So,
Just
the word path.
path.
There we
So-
go. Go out there and live the word, people. Path.
Pardon the obvious question, but why this word, path?
Path. Well, actually, we will be surprised and amazed, my dear, as we go into this. The word path is actually a very powerful word and a word picture, a concept, both through the Old and New Testaments. And just to give us the flavor, and I'm going to kind of get you to do a flyby for me, and this will just be the Old Testament, and just as the word appears, and see if we kind of get an idea where this goes.
Okay. Psalm 16, you make known to me the path of life. Proverbs 2:9 through 12. Then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity, every good path, for wisdom will come into your heart. Psalm 49:13 and 14. This is the path of those who have foolish confidence, yet after them people approve of their boasts. Proverbs 4:14 and 15. Do not enter the path of the wicked. Proverbs 4:18 and 19. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. Proverbs 4:26 and 27. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Isaiah 26:7 and 8. The path of the righteous is level. Lord, you make level the way of the righteous and the path of your judgments. O Lord, we wait for you.
So you're getting the idea here. The word path shows up a whole lot through both Testaments. Just from what we read here, you can see a path can be a good thing. A path can be a bad thing. One thing it is for sure, it's a choice. It's something that is unfolding before you. In the New Testament, something to consider, the idea of path, the parable of the sower and the seed. One of the, what's kind of singular about that is it's almost verbatim in all three synoptic gospels. So an important thing. And then, of course, in there, the path actually refers to the person's heart, their manner, their condition. So there's a whole lot of meanings that it's used for in this word path.
And when words that core to Scripture, I have to ask, does it mean the same in English as in the biblical language?
Well, and probably anybody who knows you and me knows that, like, influencing your questions and all of this. But
it makes a big difference because, they really...
You're certainly right, is that when we run into something that's a core word, you really want to know.
I may not be able to pronounce them like you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's probably somebody out there going, boy, did he butcher that. But it is worth looking at, especially for the meanings. And I always find it interesting. The Greek is always, even for a same word, will be slightly more philosophical or whatever. That's kind of my small understanding of things. But linguistically, in the Hebrew, the word was arach. It meant literally the well-trodden road, that you would go on, and just to give us a wonderful for those who are viewing. There we go. There's our graphic up there of a path, and you can tell if people imagine that a path is something well-trodden. It's an important part to realize. For the Hebrew concept, it was a way of living. It could also mean a race, a racing path. It meant a manner by which a person lived, or the manner of the person, and it meant a passing of life in definition. In the New Testament Greek, the word becomes hodos, and it means the journey. The path is that journey. It's the course of your conduct, how you act. The path is a way of thinking. It's a way of feeling. It's a way of how you come to decisions.
I never would have thought the path could have all those meanings.
And to answer your question too, as far as English, when we look at it, we will tend to use, and we may not step back and define everything, but probably nothing in there is a super big surprise, but it's a really good reminder to the point where there's a special reason for this word, or a special reason for us to look at it, and I'll give you a hint, it's a historical reason. Can you kind of guess what that might be?
You're just going to have to tell me.
Just tell you. Here we go. Even though that's veining because you've read the script. The reason is this, and to me this kind of blows me away. We know that in Antioch there was kind of a backlash against the Christians, but that's where the term Christian came from. And we've been using that now for nearly 2,000 years. But before that term was ever coined, the people who were following Christ, the disciples, were called the people of the way.
Right.
People of the way. And that word happens to be, the word way is the same word hados for path. Path and way are the same word.
Path is really biblical concept, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it really is, but we've looked at it in this kind of very powerful biblical way, so I thought it'd be fun to step back, for us to get the full flavor of the word, step back into everyday life, everyday context, just for a moment, and see how we tend to consider that word in common everyday life, the common everyday path.
yeah. Well, every path has a beginning
Mm-hmm.
and a middle, the route. You know, the route you take,
right,
and then the end destination.
and then the end destination. So you kind of get these three parts to a path. As it starts somewhere. Everybody starts somewhere, no matter what path we're on. So everybody has a history. Everybody has a context to their life. There's a journey that you take as you follow whatever the route of the path is. So here's a question for you. Now, since we're on the middle of this thing, we said beginning, route, end, How about this? If you are a hiker at all and you see, all the parks around you, every park really, follow kind of the same formula. The paths are loops. That's how you get the most walking out of them. So they start and end in the same place. So why on earth would anybody go and go down a path that will take you back to the very same place you started? It seems kind of silly, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's all about the journey, all the things you see along the way, which can be different all the time. I mean,
Well, and that's it. I mean, you're absolutely right. The truth is when hikers go out, it really is all about the journey. And of course, the concept of this word is bigger than that. But let's just take a look at how that works. So in every path, there's a few common things about the journey too, isn't there?
yeah.
And here's some, because I was just out today before I got home. I can't help it. I'm addicted to paths.
Every day, just about every day.
Out there walking, doing something. And I do love going on paths where I'll run into other people a little bit, because there's somebody else's life and they're doing something along that path. And a lot of times people are either walking their dog, and usually even if they're doing that, you'll find them walking with someone else. So when you see them in pairs, there's one way that changes happen along the path. Like, that's the thing in the journey, isn't it? You're not really the same person when you get back as when you went out.
Or even that person, if he's walking his dog and he's not walking with somebody else, he may be listening to music, relaxing, and
He may be doing that. So to me, that's what I say. We have two things: is if they're walking with a person, they're making a connection. Maybe they're catching up. Maybe it's just maintaining a relationship that they already have. But in some way, by the time they're back, they know each other a little bit better. And the other way is what you were alluding to, whether it's physical or mental health. It's usually both, because they go together. But when a person goes out for a walk, they come back more relaxed. So they've changed in their manner. They come back
more resolved. Like when you go out and you listen to, notes for the week's sermon, or
Well, and of course, all those things are happening to me as far as if I'm walking with you, then you and I are in a great discussion as we're walking along. If I'm by myself with the notes, so one, I end up more relaxed, end up hopefully in a little better shape for doing it. But in my case, there's actually that extra component, like you say. Anybody can do this. You got a phone. There's some wonderful podcasts out there, kind of like
Word for the Week.
Word for the Week. You might be clicking this on your path. But as I'm walking along, I either have notes being read to me a lot of times, or I'm listening to people who are pumping out some wisdom
Right.
in a podcast.
There's so much out there. I mean, there's so much good stuff out there.
Oh, there's some point we've got to come on and do our top picks, because there's some that I go out, I start my walk, and in the journey while listening, I am literally becoming a different person in the way that I know something by the time I get back I didn't know before, or I'm inspired in a way I wasn't inspired when I started, or even just reminded of something that
it might be mindful to say that it's good to choose the good that's out there, because there are lots of things that you can listen to that don't necessarily enrich you. So it's something to be said that there's a lot of good stuff out there.
A lot of good stuff. And actually, that's going to come into play in something we were covering later in the script. And it will be off script, but you will see. So anyway, the fact is, we're getting at the journey itself is part of the treasure of all of it. It's not the whole thing, but it is a treasure. It's not just about leaving someplace or getting someplace. The journey itself it is a point of change and evolution for the person.
I noticed the Hebrew meaning mentioned the passing of life.
Right.
What does that mean? Does it mean the path means death?
It's a good point, because and as you mentioned that, because even in funerals, sometimes you'll hear the word path get used in the path somebody followed. But I think, and this is just, from me, is the idea is more along the lines of the passage of life, or the journey you took, and as you passed along the path. So I think they're talking about more of life journey than simply the termination of that journey.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that brings us to destination. How does that fit?
Okay, like you say, everybody starts somewhere. And whoever we are, and then we take this journey. But the idea of the destination, there's two large concepts of our culture, I think, meld into path and destination, and that's fatalism and free will. The two of them come into a beautiful focus together when we consider paths.
How so?
Well, first of all, just like me, when I went down to the park today, by the way, Danville, I discovered a whole new world behind Ellis Park. But all of these paths, once started, I had my choice. And like most hiking trails are like that, you can take the yellow path or the green path or the whatever path. So you have your choice of what path you're going to take. You have your choice for, when I was out there today, one person is walking along with a dog, another person comes running down the path. So you have your choice. You can be walking, you can be running, or like me, a lot of times I'm standing still. I'll stop to look at the water or, the vegetation or something, but I'll look at that. So there is so much choice. And like you were mentioning, there's another one is when I'm walking along, if I decide to listen to a podcast, I can choose what I'm listening to. There's all of these choices involved on path. You can switch paths. You can stray off the path. You can stay on the path. You can do all of these things are choice. But then the path takes us into a destination. It's like you said, when you think destination, I guarantee you this, unless you're in some magical forest somewhere, when you get on a path, for any given path, it will 100% of the time take you to the same place. Now, whether that's a loop or it takes you out another exit, as long as you're on a given path, it will always 100% guaranteed take you to the same destination. And when you think of life, then we're talking destination becomes destiny.
Well, and that fits well with the Christian perspective, doesn't it? I mean, if a person's seeking a particular destiny like heaven, then there's a particular path to follow. And now I have to say, you've just become politically incorrect, my dear. I know.
In the fact that nobody likes anything put into absolutes.
Yeah.
But the truth is, with paths, there is one thing: you choose your path, but the destination is an absolute thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Even for those who think otherwise, it's reasonable to believe that a one, true, and perfect God may only be reached by taking one true and perfect path.
now there may be people who would argue against that and say, well, no, there are many paths that take you to God, and we're not here to disparage anybody's point of view, but we would like to point out that this too is equally reasonable, equally valid, to think that if there is one singular destination, it's not unreasonable to think there is one singular path that gets you there.
Right.
So a perfect path to a perfect God, a true path to a true God, that's really not unreasonable. And it sounds reasonable, doesn't it, that we should be called the people. Maybe we'll just update the version of it. We could say they were the people of the way in the beginning. Maybe we can call ourselves the people of the path. The meaning is pretty apt title, isn't it?
I agree. I think it sounds like a title to live by.
All right, and as we started out, we've looked at it in three languages: Orach, Hodos, and the path. Yeah.
And our prayer for you is that you find yourself walking on that one true and perfect path this week.
Right, and a reminder that as far as while you're walking on your path, that you can always find us either on the podcasts like Spotify and Anchor, iTunes, or watch the webcast as well. It's the same thing on Facebook or YouTube. They're all there.
Or simply go to canancommunity.org.
Yep, you can get there right from the website if you want. So that's it. The word is path. We're hoping we're all on the right one because every path is going somewhere. So have a good week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.